Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about Trump's Agenda 47. I had no idea it existed. This came as a simple inquiry. I wanted to know why people liked Trump so much and why somebody would vote for him. This by commenting on a Trump rally video, and most of the replies were disappointing. However, one did say, read Agenda 47. So here we are. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it's really long and there's not a lot of content in it that's relevant. So we're just gonna talk about the key points here. Trump believes that he's going to win the election regardless of the vote. So in that, he has created this Agenda 47, which reads more like a manifesto than anything else. And he talks about a lot of different things that he plans on doing when he is president again, even though we haven't actually had the election yet. But regardless, he talks about declaring wars on the cartels, saying that he's going to somehow find and take down all the cartels. He's going to cut off their global finances, which I'm not quite sure how he's going to do that because he doesn't control global finances, let alone the cartel's global finances. But he claims that he's going to do that. He talks about when he's back in office, literally, he says, when I am back in office, the drug kingpins and vicious traffickers will never sleep soundly again. How? What? There's no actual plan to discuss how he's actually going to make that happen. It's just something that he says. There's no actual evidence-based plan of attack to make those goals. He claims that he's going to deploy all necessary military assets, including the U.S. Navy, to impose a full naval embargo on cartels to ensure that they cannot use our regional waters to traffic illicit drugs to the U.S. My question is, why is he only focusing on the Navy and the regional waters? Drugs are coming in from the connected lands and connected countries, as well as through international airfare. So I'm just not quite sure why he has this emphasis on the waters. He talks about ordering the Department of Defense to make appropriate use of special forces, cyber warfare, and other covert and overt actions to inflict maximum damage on the cartels. But he doesn't actually talk about how he's going to do that. Like, yes, he says use special forces, cyber warfare, overt and covert actions, but he doesn't define what those are. He says that he's going to cut off the cartel's access to global financial systems. I don't know how he would do that because he doesn't control global financial systems. So that was kind of confusing. He claims that he's going to get full cooperation of neighboring governments to dismantle the cartels or fully expose bribes and corruption that protect these criminal networks. My question is, if he already knows about bribes and corruption happening, that's supposedly protecting criminal networks, why hasn't he done anything about it? Why not go to the FBI now and tell them what you know? Isn't it against governmental policy to harbor this information and not share it when it's detrimental to the welfare and safety of the American people? He's also going to ask Congress to ensure drug smugglers and traffickers can receive the death penalty. Now, this I have a problem with because a significant number of those drug traffickers are actually children. So in ordering this, he's actually ordering that children and babies get murdered. Many of the things that he says in his Agenda 47 are vastly inaccurate, and even the references that he cites aren't conveyed correctly in how he writes it in his bullet points. He claims that there's 200,000 deaths from drug overdoses when the number is actually around 110,000. Even cited references have been quoted saying that Trump's figures appear to have no basis in fact. Government statistics show the number of overdose deaths per year is hovering around 100,000 to 110,000, with opioid-related deaths at about 81,000. He claims that these drug cartels and human smugglers have seen revenue skyrocket 2,500% and $13 billion this year. My question is, unless you actually are working with the cartels, how do you know what their estimated net worth is, and how do you know that it increased 2,500%? Unless you're working directly with the cartels, I don't quite understand how he knows that these are the specific numbers. Trump likes to state a lot of things in this manifesto, but not many of them are actually fact. He talks about reports of torture in Mexico that have doubled, and criminal groups being violent against authorities or large crowds rose 756%. I can't understand why he put this in here, because it has no relevant merit to the election or being president or anything related to it. Last time I checked, being the American president was not congruent with being the Mexican president. So he keeps adding these numbers and statements about Mexican people being murdered, tragedies amongst families because their family members were trafficked and murdered, and so much violence against them. But he also built the wall to prevent them from coming in, right? The point is that he built this wall to keep out the Mexicans and all the other Latin American people. And now he's claiming that he cares about those people being tortured and murdered by the cartels. But he also put up a wall to prevent them from coming here. What is the point of saying anything about them if you're not helping them to a better life? One of the key points that Trump talks about in Agenda 47 is ending veteran homelessness in America. Again, he talks about the government supposedly spending $1 billion to house illegal aliens and foreign migrants in expensive luxury hotels. And I'm not quite sure what that has to do with ending veteran homelessness. He claims that he is going to kick out the illegal aliens and foreign migrants and use that money, but only some of that money, to end veteran homelessness. But he doesn't actually explain how he's going to do that. He just says that he's going to do it. Implies that right now people are putting illegals before veterans. There's no actual links or data to back any of these claims. My question is, why doesn't he use all of the money that is supposedly going to these luxury hotels? Why not use it all to end veteran homelessness? When he talks about no welfare for illegal aliens, a lot of the stuff is just rhetoric, and he basically is name calling the current president, and he seems to have a lot of vitriol and hatred towards Biden. And it comes out in his first line for his Agenda 47, no welfare for illegal aliens. He says, and I quote, "Crooked Joe Biden is running a nonstop conveyor belt of importing illegal aliens from all over the world into our country, and the Biden Department of Homeland Security is abusing its so-called parole authority to give them more governmental benefits than many law-abiding citizens, including our vets." The illegal immigrants have nothing to do with our vets. He's playing to the hearts of the American people because he's using illegal immigrants and he's trying to connect them to having anything to do with veteran homelessness. And the truth of the matter is they're two completely separate issues. He also talks about the United States being in trillions of dollars of debt, yet the radical left Democrats are illegally dispensing public benefits to illegals while they try to massively raise your taxes. The radical left communists hate you, and they hate our middle class. I don't quite understand where he gets this statement from. When did all the radical left become communists? What data did he find states that they hate the middle class? He talks a lot about this American Academy that he wants to create. It's very problematic in that he thinks that he's going to take down these private universities and these Ivy League schools, and in doing so he's going to sue them and cite them for what I don't know, but get the money supposedly from the funders of those big schools and divert it to the American Academy. But the problem with that is that you can't just sue people for being people, and you can't sue people for funding different things like universities. So what I suspect is going to happen is the funders are just going to stop funding those universities, and they're going to keep their money, and Trump still isn't going to have any money, therefore not creating this American Academy. He talks a lot about the auto industry, which he doesn't actually talk about issues. It just seems like he doesn't like electric cars. He talks a lot about how supposedly how he thinks that the manufacturing of electric cars is going to diminish the need for mechanics and auto industry personnel. That's not accurate. Just because we move from gasoline to electric doesn't mean we're not going to need less personnel. We'll probably need more. A lot of what he says there doesn't make any sense and has no factual basis. He talks about 10 principles to power his movement for great schools leading to great jobs. A lot of it is just his opinion and support for policies and procedures that are already in place. I think it's great that he wants to support policies and procedures that are already in place, but the way it reads and the way he wrote it implies that these things aren't active and currently being used when they are. Again, this one's kind of funny because he says that he will re-implement reading, writing, and arithmetic into the school curriculum. It never left the school curriculum. So he's implying that kids now are not getting sufficient education and their educational needs aren't being met, when in actuality they are. Something that he said that was very disheartening was that he will completely overhaul federal standards on school discipline to get out of control troublemakers out of the classroom and into reform schools and correction facilities for the good of themselves and their peers alike. This will include supporting immediate expulsion for any student who harms a teacher or another student. I have questions about this. One is, who is going to pay for these reform schools or correction facilities? How do you qualify a student as an out of control troublemaker? And what is this going to do in the long run? You're isolating kids instead of getting them help in the community that they need. And sometimes stuff happens. Just because something happens doesn't mean that kid is a bad kid. It just means he made bad choices. This is another thing that is really frightening that Trump plans to do. He claims he's going to support school districts to allow highly trained teachers to carry concealed weapons at school. And he claims that it will greatly reduce the threat of school shootings. He also claims that he will support federal funding to hire veterans, retired police officers, and other trained gun owners as armed guards in our nation's schools. This is problematic for several reasons, but mostly because veterans and retired police have significant rates of PTSD. Also because there's no exclusionary criteria regarding mental health and wellness for owning and operating a firearm. This is a really poor choice and does not bode well for the youth of the nation. He talks a lot about life-saving medications and how he's going to increase the economy by forcing pharmaceutical companies to create life-saving medications in the United States. However, we already have a deficit of medication and it's already shorthanded. To prevent any further unnecessary deaths, we import it from other countries. The problem with what he wants to do is that he thinks that he's going to order pharmaceutical companies to hire more people and make these drugs when it's too expensive to make them here. That's why we import them from other countries. When he tries to do this, the pharmaceutical companies here are just going to shut down and retire and say bye-bye. And we're not going to have any drugs because he refuses to want to import them from overseas. In this section, he does have a couple citations from different websites and news reports. However, the things that he's citing isn't accurate and actually says the exact opposite of what he's trying to claim that they say. One of his bullet points is in this manifesto is using impoundment to cut waste, stop inflation, and crush the deep state. He claims Congress has run deficits in all but 4 years since 1974. Those 4 years were not when he was in office. So stating this is actually null and void because it has nothing to do with him nor what he could possibly do as a president. From their own cited source, I quote, "Since 1970, the federal government has run deficits during every fiscal year for all but 4 years from 1998 to 2001. Clinton was president during those years." Again, citing this has nothing to do with him or how he's going to crush the deep state. He talks a little bit about addressing the rise of chronic childhood illness. He says that when he's in office, he's going to establish a special presidential commission charged with investigating what is causing these decades-long increase in chronic illness. My question is, why didn't he start this when he was originally in office? It didn't just become a problem in the last 4 years or the last 10 years. It's been a significant problem for decades. I just question why he mentions this now in his manifesto versus like why he didn't just start it when he was in office. One of the things that he talks about is ending the scourge of drug addiction in America. But again, this is one of those subjects where he has these citations that say the exact opposite of what he's claiming them to say. He wanted to essentially cut off funding to Medicaid and Medicare, and in doing so, he wants to prevent substance use disorders to be covered under Medicaid and Medicare, which actually is going to cause a rise in drug addiction and drug overdoses versus his supposed decrease. Something that was very disheartening was when he says that he's ending the nightmare of homelessness, drug addicts, and dangerously deranged. He's talking about putting those who are mentally ill back into institutions and getting them off the streets, supposedly rehabilitating them and then reintegrating them into society. We already do this now, and we're struggling. So essentially, what he wants to do is something that we're already doing, and this isn't a novel idea or a novel plan. It doesn't really help solve or lessen the issue. Some of the bullet points that he points out in his manifesto have no citations of data. I'm going to read a couple of the headings for those bullet points to give you an idea of and how much he talked about these different issues, but how much there's nothing to back up his claims. Ending veteran homelessness in America. No welfare for illegal aliens. The American Academy. President Trump's pledge to homeschool families. Rebuilding America's depleted military. Protecting students from the radical left and Marxist maniacs infesting educational institutions. Addressing rise of chronic childhood illness. ending the nightmare of homeless, drug addicts, and dangerously deranged, preventing World War III. All of this to say that what Trump is saying in his manifesto is very appealing to some of the American people, but it's just that, a manifesto. It doesn't actually outline feasible plans with data-driven research that will actually change our economy. He talks a lot about things that play to the hearts of Americans, but he also talks about creating a divide between us. Many of the bullet points and subsequent writings that are in his manifesto create a divide between Republicans and Democrats. We are the American people. We're supposed to be working together, not trying to separate each other. Anyways, thank you guys for coming on this journey with me today. I don't know that my original question was ever answered or is going to be answered, but sometimes it is what it is. I hope you guys took some good information out of this, and the moral of the story is make sure to check your facts and check your references and check again, because people can say what they want to say and they make things up, and unless you check, you'll never know.